Hi there, this is Tony from pianotone.ca, and this is my introductory review on the Hammond SK Pro stage keyboard. This keyboard has an insane amount of features, functionality, and deep dive customization available. And after owning it for a few months and using it as my main keyboard with my blues band, I've still only just barely scratched the surface of what the SK Pro can do. So this review will just be an intro to the features and what the SK Pro has to offer, and I'll try to focus on the main features that I think people considering it are going to be interested in. Unlike many of my reviews, though, I won't be deep diving into how to do a lot of things. This user interface is amazing, but there's a lot going on there. And if I try to include all the how-to details on using it, this review is going to be hours long. So I will save things like that for some separate, more focused videos down the line. And I need to emphasize, I'm still pretty new at Hammond organ myself. So I think that this review is going to be most useful to other people like me, people with some piano or keyboard experience that really like Hammond organ and are considering buying one, but are a bit new to the world of Hammond. So let's take an introductory look at the Hammond SK Pro. Okay, Hammond product lines. Given that I'm focusing this review on people like me that are relatively new to Hammond products, I wanted to start by going over the main differences between the Hammond product lines in case you're not familiar with them. If you are already familiar with the Hammond lines, then just skip ahead to the section on key action. Okay, so the SK product line. The SK line is the stage keyboard line. This line includes a Hammond organ sound engine and detailed organ functionality, but also includes other sounds like pianos, electric pianos, brass, etc. So the SK Pro, which is available in 61 and 73 key versions, I've got the 73 key, came out in 2021, finally replacing the prior version, which was also available in 61 and 73 key versions. That was the Hammond SK1. The SK1 came out in 2010. The SK1 probably lasted as long as it did because it was, and still is, a great product. Even after all this time, you still see SK1s being used on stages all over the place, and you can still find brand new ones floating around in some stores. Note that the SK Pro doesn't have the most recent sound engine from Hammond, which is the modeled Tonewheel 2 engine. The SK Pro has the modeled Tonewheel 1 engine. Then we have the XK line. This line is focused on organ sounds only, so no pianos, electric pianos, or other random voices are included. There are actually kind of two lines within the line in the XK series. There's one line that mimics the physical controls of original full-sized Hammond organs, and then there's XKs that have modern digital controls. On both of these lines, you usually find other organ voices like Vox and Farfisa included, but no pianos or electric pianos. The XK4 is the most recent product in this line, coming out in 2023, and that replaced the XK1C, which, like the SK1, was getting a bit long in the tooth, having been released in 2012. The XK5 is the current model from the other XK line that has no menu screen or any digital interface. It's meant to look and work the same as a real Hammond organ. It has physical controls all laid out the same as on a traditional Hammond, including the black keys on the left side that are actually used to load presets on a real Hammond, and extra sets of drawbars for lower manual, bass pedals, etc. The XK5 replaced the XK3 a few years ago. Note that the XK5, like the SK Pro, has the modeled Tonewheel 1 sound engine, so not quite as current as the XK4 or the M Solo's modeled Tonewheel 2 sound engine. Then we have possibly a new product line, or a part XK and part SK product line, and that's the Hammond M Solo. This is a new and very unique Hammond product, which is super portable, has 49 keys. Like the XK4, this is an organ-focused product with the latest modeled Tonewheel 2 engine that also has other organs like Vox and Farfisa. But then, like the SK Pro, it also has a synth engine built in, although it doesn't have any of the extra sounds like piano or electric piano. The M Solo is insanely light and portable and is meant to be added to your existing piano or keyboard rig to get you high-end Hammond sounds with minimal added effort. I did that exact thing, and I bought a Hammond M Solo to use with my Numa Compact 2X with my band, and it worked out really well. I did eventually decide, though, that I was playing enough organ with my band that I really wanted to go with a full-size waterfall key bed. So my buying decision, why didn't I just stick with the M Solo for my organ needs? Because while the sound engine is amazing and the key action is really good, 90% of what I play with my band now actually is Hammond organ, so I really wanted more keys and the proper semi-weighted waterfall action. So then it was down to the SK Pro, the XK4, or the XK5. I ruled out the XK5 immediately. All these products are already pretty expensive, and the XK5 costs more than the others. It's bigger, bulkier, and I'd prefer a digital interface. I agonized between the XK4 and SK Pro for quite a while, and I'm still not positive I made the right decision. It was either the XK4 and carry 2 keyboards to band practices and gigs, so carry the XK4 and something like my Numa Compact, or buy the SK Pro and hopefully be able to get away with just carrying 1 keyboard around since it has lots of other voices. So I chose the SK Pro, and I did spend the extra for the 73 keys instead of 61 because I was expecting to need as much room as possible for splitting the keyboard into multiple voices. And so far so good. I guess we'll see if I stick with the SK Pro or if one day I switch to an XK4 coupled with another keyboard for piano. Okay, key action. I know you probably want to get to the sound demos, but I wanted to talk about the key action first so that you could listen for something that has to do with the key action when you get to the sound demos. So a proper Hammond organ keybed and key action is actually a bit unique and is very different from a piano. Organ keybeds should be semi-weighted, not fully weighted, and not graded, so all keys should have the same weight. The shape of the keys is also really important. Organ keybeds should be waterfall shaped, so they should have a smooth front edge on the white keys. So they're not supposed to have a lip over the front edge of the key like a piano does. And the front edges should be nice and smooth, even a little bit rounded as opposed to having sharp corners. And why is this? Because doing organ slides or palm smears, which are the equivalent of a piano glissando, are an essential part of organ playing. And I can even tell you from my limited experience that doing these types of maneuvers on fully weighted piano-shaped keys is not easy, doesn't sound that great, and to be honest, can actually hurt once in a while. So how are the keys and the key action on the SK Pro? In one word, spectacular. These keys have the absolute perfect shape and feel. They have the proper waterfall shape with super smooth edges on the front corners. They've got a fantastic semi-weighted feel to them. They are absolutely ideal for organ playing. Doing palm smears, percussive strikes, or any other organ techniques on these keys is awesome. And they're actually not bad at all for playing piano songs expressively as well, since they do offer some decent resistance. I did buy the M Solo first, and I might have just stuck with it and not bought an SK Pro if the M Solo had proper waterfall keys. As I mentioned in my review on the M Solo, the key action was the best synth action for organ playing that I've ever tried, but it's still just not the same. This picture shows the front of the M Solo keys compared to an SK1, which has proper waterfall keys. So I mentioned there was something about the action that I wanted to talk about before getting to the sounds. The SK Pro's keybed is a virtual multi-contact keybed. So what does that mean? Well, on a real Hammond organ, which is a tone wheel organ, when you pull out drawbars, tone wheels are going to start to spin at slightly different speeds. So the sound you hear for each drawbar is going to start at a slightly different time. This behavior and effect is replicated on the top-of-the-line Hammond XK5 with actual multi-contacts in the keybed. On the other newer models like the SK Pro, XK4, and even the M Solo, this effect is there, but it's virtual. So if I push in all the drawbars except for one, and I press a key really, really slowly, it sounds normal. You don't hear anything unusual, and that's because there's only one tone wheel that has to start up. But what if I pull out a few more drawbars and then do the same thing? Now you can hear the different tone wheels starting up at different speeds. Pretty cool effect, even if it is just virtual. Here's a quick clip from my M Solo review where I demoed this effect compared to an older SK1 I borrowed from a store. The SK1 doesn't have this multi-contact feature. You can hear as I press the note slowly that the different drawbar sounds, pitches, are coming in at different times. Now, what happens when I do this on the SK1? They all just start at the identical time, and that's because it doesn't have that virtual multi-contact feature. So pretty cool feature. So overall, the action on the Hammond SK Pro, I don't think there's a better key action available for playing organ pieces. Hammond is the top of the line, in my opinion. Okay, so the user interface. If you take a look at the front panel of the SK Pro, you can see it's a bit overwhelming at first. So I thought I'd just do a quick overview on the user interface so that when I'm talking about sounds and other features later, then those demos might be a little bit easier to follow. So there's 4 sound engines on the SK Pro, which I'm going to talk about more in a bit. But they're nicely and clearly labeled and divided into their own sections of physical controls on the user interface, and that's awesome. So over on the left, we've got the organ section with almost all of the controls for the organ. There's a knob for controlling the organ's relative volume compared to the other sounds. You got the drawbars, you got controls for vibrato and chorus, controls for the upper and lower manual, as well as the Leslie rotary speaker. Now the percussion controls are actually over on the right, which I'll show you in a second when I move the camera, but I've heard multiple experienced Hammond organ players praise that because that's where they're located on a real Hammond, so they're used to looking for them there. Then to the right of the organ controls, we've got controls for the piano and ensemble voices. And they've each also got their own relative volume. I love this, by the way. It's so easy to quickly adjust relative volumes of layers on the fly. They've also got little subcategory buttons as well, which will help you find the voice you're after as quickly as possible. Then if we slide all the way over to the right side of the keyboard, you've got controls for the fourth sound engine, the mono synthesizer, also has its own relative volume control, which is awesome. And this is where those organ percussion controls are located that I was talking about earlier. Then all the way back on the far left again, we've got some overall controls like the master volume, and controls for transposing and octave shifting quickly and easily. And we've also got a pitch bend and a modulation wheel over here on the left. So back in the middle section, we've got this beautiful full color screen, which is super easy to read, and you can see it from any angle and all sorts of different light. To the right of it, we've got controls for navigating through the various menus. Right below the screen, there's this grid of buttons that are used for a few things. They're used for working with your registrations and favorites, which are called combination patches. More on that in a bit. And they're also used like good old flip phone buttons for typing out text to assign names to your custom patches in the menu. Then below those, you're going to see these four white buttons, one for each sound engine: organ, piano, ensemble, and synth. So the organ button is lit up right now, so if I play, you're going to hear an organ. No surprise. If I hit piano, you're going to hear a piano, and so on. Now layering is super easy. You just hit 2, 3, or even all 4 buttons at once. So for example, if I wanted to layer the piano and the ensemble together, super easy, and I could press all 4. And include all 4 buttons in a layer. Now, if one of them is too loud, remember each sound engine has its own relative volume control. So if I go back to that piano and pad combination here, let's say I want the pad to be really loud or really small. It's super easy to adjust that on the fly. I love those volume knobs. So let's say I wanted to split instead of layer. To do that, all I have to do is specify which voice is going to be in the lower range. So let's say I'm going to hold down lower and hit piano. And now I'm split with the organ. Now over here on the left, you're not going to be able to see this on this shot, but I'm just going to press this split button that was way over on the left side of the keyboard. And then now I've got piano on the left and organ on the right. So super easy. Now you might be wondering, what if I want to combine either as a layer or a split 2 instruments that are both in the same section? For example, an acoustic piano layered with an electric piano. That's super easy for the piano and ensemble sections. These 2 sections are sample based, so you can choose a sound from the piano section and assign it to the ensemble button, or vice versa. Now the organ and synth voices are actually generated on the fly by how your controls are set, so you can only have an organ in the organ section and you can only have a synth in the synth section. Now you can do an incredible amount of deep dive customization into a ton of areas on the SK Pro, none of which I'm going to be including in this video. But one quick thing to note that helps you quickly and easily zero in on what it is you want to edit is virtually every button on the front panel can be long pressed to quickly take you directly to the appropriate screen within the menu system. So as an example, if I want to edit my overdrive settings, I've got this overdrive button just over here on the left. I'm going to hold that down. And when I do that, it takes me straight to the screen where I can edit my overdrive settings, as opposed to having to look through the menu system to try and get to the same place. So that's awesome. Okay, so sounds. Sounds on the SK Pro, to sum it up, wow. There are 4 sound engines which can be used separately or together, layered or split. The highlight of course is the organ engine, Hammond's modeled Tone Wheel 1. So I will go over that one first. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is actually not the latest Hammond sound engine, which is modeled Tone Wheel 2, which is what you're going to find on the XK4 or the Hammond M Solo. The SK5 and the SK Pro both use modeled Tone Wheel 1. There are some features in this engine that were new when it came out a few years back that, to be honest, I'm not really qualified to talk about, but I'll just quickly mention them. Like a new digital Leslie rotary speaker effect, a new tube modeling system, and a new emulation of traditional Hammond transformers. And the organ engine on the SK Pro isn't limited to just Hammond B3. It also includes other Hammond variations like the A100 and C3. And in addition to those, the organ engine also models Vox, Farfisa, acetone, and pipe organs. Now, I'm not very knowledgeable in any of those other organ models. I will demo them, and they do sound amazing to me. But since this is an intro review, I'm going to be focusing on the Hammond B3. So let's check that out. So even though I'm still new to Hammonds, I've got to say the SK Pro's Hammond engine sounds amazing. The first two keyboards I had with full organ functionality were the Yamaha CK series and my Numa Compact 2X. And they're both good, but the SK Pro is on a whole other level, even to my inexperienced ears. The unaffected tones are better, the Leslie emulation is better, the overdrive is better, etc. Here's a quick demo of some of the other organs on the SK Pro. So those organs also sounded pretty amazing to me. I'm definitely going to start trying to learn some Doors songs on the Vox one of these days. That organ sounded fantastic. So what about the rest of the sounds? Well, there's far too many for me to be demoing here, but I will go through a few of them quickly, including some of the included synth patches. So my thoughts on the other sounds. The pianos, electric pianos, pads, strings, and bass guitar sounds to me are surprisingly good and totally usable live. They've improved those sounds significantly since the SK1. The main piano sound appears to be a Yamaha CF Grand sample, so no surprise that I like it. Check out how eerily similar that piano sample sounds to the sample on my Yamaha PSR EW425 keyboard. The Rhodes electric piano is fantastic, as is the warm pad. The only sounds that I've encountered so far that I'm not super impressed with on the SK Pro are the brass and woodwinds. My band occasionally wants me to throw in some saxophone solos on a few songs, and those sounds are pretty ordinary, especially compared with even much less expensive Yamahas. Yamaha does kind of lead the industry with those kinds of sounds. I've actually started toying with connecting my super inexpensive Yamaha PSR E383 to the SK Pro purely for the saxophone sounds, which are actually awesome. But overall, I'm really, really happy with the sounds on the SK Pro. Okay, so massive customization. As I mentioned at the start of this review, I don't want to get bogged down into deep diving into the endless things that the SK Pro can do. But I do need to mention, though, that there is a level of customization available in this keyboard that is so far beyond anything I've ever seen in another keyboard, I can't even begin to describe it. I'm personally not the type of player who wants to spend any time tweaking sounds. I don't even usually do anything more than adjust the reverb and the EQ a little bit. I rarely even play with effects. I just want to play, so I often stick to the built-in sounds the way they are for the most part. But if you are the type of player that loves to deep dive into customization, you will not be disappointed. And it goes way beyond just inserting some effects here and there. You can deep dive big time into any voice and edit so many things, especially with the organ. You can edit things like the Leslie, the leakage. There's just a crazy amount of customization available. To be honest, I actually get nervous even browsing through these menus because it's so far over my head that I don't want to mess anything up. But if this is your kind of thing and you know what you're doing, you're going to be thrilled. Okay, so for connectivity, I've never seen this much connectivity, but before I get started, a super unique and really cool feature on the SK Pro is the way they implemented the power. Instead of an adapter plug or a wall wart of some sort, there's actually a proper AC outlet on the back of the keyboard and a power cable. So this is awesome, and if you buy an SK Pro and you leave it on and you walk away, don't be alarmed when you hear a loud snapping sound, because when the SK Pro turns off due to inactivity, this big power switch is actually going to snap back down to its off position. And another thing to keep in mind is that the SK Pro actually uses a tiny bit of power when it's plugged in, even if it is off. So if you're not going to be using it for a long period of time, it's a good idea to just unplug it from the wall. Okay, so starting on the right-hand side, we've got an 11-pin Leslie speaker connector. For all you hardcore Hammond fans who own actual Leslies, this is for you. Note that if you have an actual Leslie connected here, the onboard digital Leslie effect is going to be disabled at the headphone and line out ports. Next to that, we've got a 1/4 inch stereo headphone port. And then next to that, we've got left and right 1/4 inch mono line out ports for connecting to external audio equipment. And if you just use the left port as it should be, you're going to get a merged left and right mono signal so that you can use just that port if your PA system or amp only has one available input. Now for some fancy high-end Hammond connectivity that's new to me. You got a 1/4 inch rotary out. This outputs the rotary channel of the organ section. It allows you to bypass the digital Leslie if you want a dry audio output from the organ section. Then you've got a 1/4 inch organ pedal out. This is another thing I'm not familiar with, but this is going to output the pedal part of the organ section so that you can connect it to a subwoofer to beef up the bass. Then there are two 1/4 inch individual outs. These are outputs that you can assign in the menu to the non-organ sections and connect to external mixers or effects units. These outputs are not going to include the master, reverb, EQ, or volume. Now we're back to connectivity that I am familiar with. There's a 1/8 inch stereo audio in along with a gain knob for you to stream external audio in from a device. This is intended to stream in external audio like backing tracks from a device, which it does work really well for. I've actually also used this to stream in a stereo signal from the headphone out on my Yamaha PSR E383 keyboard so that I can stream in drum beats to practice along with, and I've even actually started taking advantage of some of the E383's extra sounds like saxophone that Yamaha does really well, and that works awesome. Then we've got two 1/4 inch configurable foot switch jacks. You can use a basic sustain pedal, which is just an on and off switch, to do things like speed up or slow down the Leslie speed. Or you can even scroll through your favorites. I have a basic Yamaha brick switch pedal that I use for turning the rotary speed to fast and slow, which is super handy. Then there's a 1/4 inch customizable expression pedal port that I'm using for organ volume swells. I'm currently just using an inexpensive M Audio pedal. I might one day upgrade to a Hammond pedal, but they're super expensive and this one does the job well enough for me. Then we've got a 1/4 inch damper or sustain pedal port for connecting a generic sustain pedal for use with your piano patches. Then the SK also has traditional 5-pin MIDI in and MIDI out ports, so you can use the SK as a controller, or you can access the SK sounds from another controller. The most likely use for this, in my opinion, would be to use a fully weighted and graded hammer action controller to connect to the MIDI in on the SK, and use that for playing the awesome piano patches on the SK Pro. That way you'd get a fully weighted and graded, a truer piano action. Then we've got a USB to host port for transmitting MIDI to apps on a PC, tablet, or a phone, which can also be used for loading and saving setup files. It's a shame this port doesn't also transmit audio, but there had to be something missing. And then finally, we've got a USB flash drive port, and that's also used for loading and saving setup files. So this is an amazing amount of connectivity, including a bunch of advanced stuff aimed at hardcore pro Hammond users, so super cool. Some people might wonder, on a product this expensive, how come there's no Bluetooth? Well, to be honest, this is a stage keyboard, and I would personally never trust a wireless Bluetooth connection on stage myself. I would always want a wired connection. So I don't feel that's a loss. Something else to just quickly mention is, like on a lot of other stage keyboards, all of the ports are actually labeled on the top of the keyboard. So you can actually quite easily reach around to the back and access these ports without necessarily having to go around and look for them and stuff. So it's very, very helpful. Okay, so what's missing or could be improved on the Hammond SK Pro? Not much. This keyboard is an absolute beast. The semi-weighted waterfall key action is top of the line for organ playing as far as I'm concerned. I've never played anything better myself. And the fact that they're semi-weighted makes them totally playable for piano as well. It's the perfect compromise for me, and it allows me to get away with only having to bring one keyboard to band practices and gigs. The organ sounds are absolutely fabulous. The piano, electric piano, and pad sounds were a very pleasant surprise. The connectivity is amazing. The user interface is complicated at first, but once you get the hang of working with the patches and the combination patches, I can move around the UI very quickly and easily to do what I need to do, which is a huge feature for a stage instrument. The screen has super useful info and is really easy to read from all angles and in different light levels. And I love the physical controls that are split into their respective sound engines. And the super easy sound engine buttons allow you to split and layer really quickly and really easily. I basically have nothing negative to say at all about the SK Pro. Is it expensive? Absolutely. Are you getting a lot for that price? Absolutely. Okay, so the competition, the Hammond SK Pro versus the Nord Electro 6. The closest direct competitor for the SK Pro that I know of would definitely be the Nord Electro 6, which also comes in 61 and 73 key versions, and also has an organ engine as well as other sounds available. The 61 and 73 key Nords are actually about the same price as their Hammond 61 and 73 key counterparts. The Nords also have a fantastic waterfall key action. I believe they use Fatar key beds. So the key action is awesome, but it does always feel just a touch heavier and just a touch less smooth than my SK. Now, I have never used a Nord other than just in stores on my lunch hour, so I can't really offer much of an opinion. I do find the user interface confusing a bit while I go to test them out in a store, but I also found the SK's user interface a little bit confusing at first too, so that's not a fair criticism. I do know there are tons of Nord fans out there, and rightly so. Nords are one of the most commonly seen stage keyboards ever, and for good reason. They're built very well. They also have great sounds. So why did I buy a Hammond instead? Well, I found the key action to be just slightly preferable on the SK, and I was also super impressed with my M Solo's sounds. And to be totally honest, when spending this much money, I really wanted a true Hammond. I knew if I'd bought an Ord, I'd probably end up still wanting a Hammond one day, so that's the direction that I went. Okay, so the verdict on the Hammond SK Pro. As I mentioned earlier, I really have nothing negative to say about this keyboard. If you are looking for a high-end stage keyboard with top-of-the-line key action, sounds, user interface, customization, and connectivity that also has some surprisingly good extra sounds like pianos, electric pianos, pads, and strings, and oh yeah, it's also got a synth engine, this is an absolutely fabulous keyboard. It's perfect for me to use with my band and allows me to only have to carry one keyboard around. So when would I not recommend the Hammond SK Pro? If you already have a stage piano or keyboard that you're really happy with that has piano, electric piano, and other sounds already taken care of, and you're only looking for an organ, then I would recommend looking at the Hammond XK4 or even the Hammond M Solo. Or if your main focus is piano and electric piano and not really organ, and you're just looking for an all-in-one stage keyboard that has everything, but you're really focused more on the piano, then I would recommend saving some money and looking at a Yamaha CK88, which is a fantastic stage piano with fully weighted keys, which is great for piano, but still has some decent organ functionality and sounds. Or if you want a stage keyboard that's great for organ and piano, but the SK Pro is just too expensive, check out my favorite budget stage keyboard with a full organ engine, the Studio Logic Numa Compact 2X. That keyboard also has a key action that's semi-weighted, and while it does have piano-shaped keys, the feel is actually very usable for both piano and organ. So that's pretty much it for this review. As always, I've got links in the description below to products I've mentioned, so you can check out current prices in your area, as well as some links to other relevant reviews of mine, and also some links to online piano training that worked for me that I highly recommend. So thanks again for stopping by, and happy organ and piano shopping. Have an awesome day.